when I saw ChatGPT, I'm like, ah, that's it. You know, ComfyUI is dead. But then when you start digging out a bit and want to have a bit more from it, I find it just limiting. A sketch to image, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now we start talking, like to see that there's a real potential there that we could use in architecture. And the more I feel like the real skills is critical thinking.
Today, I have the great pleasure to receive Brice Pannetier, who is an architect and a generative design specialist based in Australia. We are going to talk about his practical use of AI and especially how he connects tools like Rhino with AI generative tools like ComfyUI. We are going to talk also about the future of AI for architecture. What does it change for our architects? Do architects need to fear about AI or, as the contrary, use it? And why AI is not in Revit, and what would be the ideal AI feature inside BIM software like Revit. If you don't know this channel, my name is Sebastien. I am an architect, and this channel, Future Architecture, we talk about AI, how to use it practically, what tool to use, what it will change for your practice. So if you want to learn AI on a daily basis, please subscribe to this channel to be notified of my new videos. But now, let's jump to this video with Brice Pannetier. Hello, Brice. Thank you to be there.
Thanks. Hi, Sebastien. Thank you for having me.
I follow a bit your updates on LinkedIn, and I thought it was very interesting what you share, especially about how to design, to connect the design with the image creation. I don't know if you remember the post I have in mind, this type of automation where you are on your design software and you change something on the 3D model and immediately there is a new image.
Yeah, and I know which one you mean. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting workflow. The streamline between like the 3D model and what you could sort of create, and then sort of direct feedback in Flux or Stable Diffusion. It's quite exciting sort of process overall.
And for you, the advantages of connecting the image creation with 3D modeling is what? Do you think it changed the way we design, or to have direct feedback like this?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because it just sort of question the workflow, right? So it feels like a bit the same as like when you use ChatGPT and you ask and you sort of brainstorm, you feel you're brainstorming with someone else and have like another sort of information coming up. It's a bit the same in design. So, you know, I see that a lot with like, you can do a sketch and then you could just sort of write a prompt, describe it, and then sort of have some direct feedback. And I use a lot like computational design, for example, where it's you're basically coding your architecture. So you're coding the structure or the logic behind your architecture, and then you imagine like panelings and openings, and then suddenly with AI, those panels can become windows, can become a wall, can become an opening in the architecture. So the potential of like interpretation of that sort of simple geometry can be quite interesting, and it can also trigger things that you might not have thought before. And I think it's just this sort of dialogue that is really interesting and fascinating between the 3D world and the AI. And I think it's just this constant sort of questioning of ideas and brainstorming that is quite interesting and fascinating, at least for me.
Okay, great. But we dive directly into the topic, but maybe we can just de-zoom a little bit and just introduce you, and please introduce you and tell how you discover AI and what did you do before discovering AI? What's your main occupation, basically?
Yeah, so I study architecture in France, in Rouen, in Normandy, and I moved to Germany where I discovered computational design and digital design. So where suddenly like it was about using digital tools to actually generate architecture. So simulate physics using Maya, for example, to come up with concept. And I found the approach of using a digital tool to actually come up with concept, with idea for your architecture was quite fascinating. And that's also where I learned to code in Grasshopper and Python and all those type of things in Stuttgart. Mm. And then I came back to France and I work with Philippe Ram, who is a very famous French Swiss architect. And it was really interesting to work on a project in Taichung overseas. And then eventually I moved to Australia and I worked for Populous for almost 8 years, where I was a computational design lead and a designer at Populous, where I was designing large-scale projects, stadiums, facade mostly, and envelope like roof and this type of large-scale project. And that was super exciting. A lot of coding, and then a lot of design, working with like amazing designers, and creative people, usually using like Sketch that I translate into 3D, and then we just sort of develop the concept. And yeah, so this is sort of a bit of my background. And since then, I left and started my own practice where I'm doing some consulting in computational design, in BIM. But also in AI now recently.
Okay, and you are based in Australia?
I'm based in Australia, yes, on the Gold Coast in Queensland.
So which city?
The Gold Coast.
Gold Coast is the region, but the city.
It's around Broad Beach and Southport, but everything is sort of like close to each other. So it's like, yeah, it's a large city, and we usually name it as Gold Coast because all the cities are like close to each other. But yeah, it's correct. It's like sort of an agglomeration of cities there.
Okay, and so you come from the world of generative design, from computational design, and after at a moment you discovered AI, as you told me. But at first you were not convinced by the capacity of AI for architecture, and suddenly you discover new possibilities. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. It was a bit of a process for me because I saw images with Midjourney and the first sort of Midjourney version, and I was like, this is a lot to take on, and a lot of learning and a lot of research, and I couldn't really see the full potential of it. I was just like, yes, okay, it's good for idea generation, but I couldn't see like really the full potential. So I sort of came quite late to the party until I saw like, about the control net and how you could actually control the geometry. I think the first things I saw was probably in Automatic 1111, and it was a sketch to image, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now we start talking, like to see that there is a real potential there that we could use in architecture. And then I sort of explore, like, what if, like, instead of a sketch, it becomes the 3D, and what if it's a facade of the building, and how do you adjust to settings, and that's where I found it sort of broad a bit the application of AI. Again, I think you can still use, and I would definitely use Midjourney or text to image workflow early on in the project when you brainstorm ideas, when you want to discuss all those ideas. I think they're an amazing tool. But then this control net allows us to actually look at a bit further down the track. So now we have the architecture, we have the volume, we have the program, we have the space, and now we can start again questioning AI to actually give us more information about how the space could be. And then, but the program is already there, because a lot of challenge with AI is an image is not helpful for us. An image can be a good source of inspiration, but we have constraint. We have space, we have program, we have usage. Like, you can't just have image. Like, you need to start building up. You have a context. There is a history. There are some climatic constraints. All those type of things will influence your architecture. So having it as a control net a bit down the track was allow us to stretch a bit how we can use AI.
Okay, so if I understood well, you are talking about control net, which is a kind of module of stable diffusion ecosystem. And which editor do you use practically? You talk about Automatic 111, but
Yeah, but then I shift to ComfyUI is sort of my favorite and my go-to in terms of user interface, just because of its flexibility, and it just reminds me a bit of computational design and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tool I used to use every day, and I find it quite easy to get around in terms of interface. It's something I'm more familiar with, and also the ability to build workflows and you know like and not only just sort of focusing on control net and the image that I was mentioning, but also how video can actually question maybe some process or architecture way of thinking, or how do you present a project in the age of AI. I was just thinking, you know, like the other day, I was just like, what if like you put yourself in the project you're presenting and then you just create a video of a project that doesn't exist yet, um, just using AI to generate that video. And then I found this is a potential that has never been done yet in architecture, and I found it just fascinating. Is that the future of presenting your project? Is it just
Presenting
putting
as if you were physically on the project and in the video.
yeah. Why not? You know, like now that you can train a LoRa and do the things and then do image to video, why not just sort of build up your project, have all the control net to control the architecture outcome and the image, and then you put you there, and then you create that video with lip sync, and then you just present your project. I don't know. I mean, this is something that could be a now that the tool is there. Is it, you know, is that a new application of it? And this is, I think, the flexibility with ComfyUI and the fact that you can actually test locally, very cheap, like, you know, like for almost nothing except the good graphic cards. I think that's what's exciting. It's just like this prototyping and test workflow is quite stunning.
Mm. But as you discussed with, you work for other architecture companies, so probably you know if they use AI or not. But in my experience, when I presented ComfyUI, they were kind of scared by the complexity of the interface, and also there is if you want to start, you need as you told a good GPU, so a good computer. Me personally, I bought a brand new Mac, but the Mac is not able to compute fast enough. So I would need to buy another computer, for example.
Oh no.
and,
Yeah.
and at first, it was also quite complicated to download all this model locally and so on. So, do you think it's a tool that could be that every architect is more or less testing? Or is it a tool only for the more adventurous of the architects?
Well, it's a very interesting question because, you know, like, of course, big company like MVRDV or being an architecture company, MVRDV already have a video about their workflow and how they use AI in their work, which is a fascinating a resource. And, you know, Norman Foster and like the big architects are actually using it on a daily basis. They definitely have people. And actually, recently, went to an office here on the Gold Coast, and they are very innovative as well. And they're always at the edge of technology. They do a lot of things with technology, and they have a workflow, fascinating workflow that they use. And they use ComfyUI, and they have a workflow, and they're able to actually generate a lot of images for their DA. And so they actually use it already, and their workflow, we review their workflow together, and it's really good. Like there is a bit of Photoshop down the track, but I think they have a very solid workflow in place, and they already see the benefits. So I think it's a question of time until architect sort of take that into consideration. But yeah, I think it's definitely for me it's definitely another tool that will sort of need to have, or like just help further. The same way as, like, you know, you can live without ChatGPT, but living with it is quite nice as well. So it's sort of like, you know, these things where you probably don't need it, like, absolutely, but I think it's a very nice addition and a very powerful addition.
Yes, but to me, in the landscape of AI image generation for architect, I identify this solution, ComfyUI, which is more powerful, the more complex, but at the same time the more powerful. After you have some specialized AI tool for architects like Render, for example, which is much more simple, but you cannot configure it as well. The style of image is just the ones that they choose, but you cannot have your own style really. And lately, there were a massive update of LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini that brought to the that are multimodal model, which allow to generate image rather close to the original image. So if you give some, for example, a render, a 3D model, after you can make a render relatively easily and with some precision. So do you see that at the moment everybody will everything will be possible with ChatGPT, and everybody will design in a conversational way, just talking to the model, or is it still useful to set up a complex setup with ComfyUI, for example?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Sebastien. You have like some really, really good questions. So I think it's a very interesting one. When I saw ChatGPT, I'm like, that's it. You know, ComfyUI is dead. There's nothing like, you know, like everyone wants ChatGPT. It seems to do like some amazing work. But then when you start digging out a bit and want to have a bit more from it, I find it just limiting. And again, I think it can be used. Like I just published a video just tonight actually on LinkedIn where I actually use it for a couple of things. For a logo, it's a video about Brisbane Olympic 2032, and I use ChatGPT to create the logo with 2032 Olympic, and then with the Olympic rings, and I ask it to just generate it because it's just sort of easier than just jumping in ComfyUI and then setting up and things. But I just still feel like I've tried for one of the other video I've done, and I found just the aesthetic, as you said, like the control over the aesthetic, the control over the output is too random for me. Like I need more control to be able to really get what I want. And it just reminds me, you know, in computational design, like in Grasshopper and Rhino, there are plugins that you can just download and you drop in your canvas, and it's doing some amazing things. But if it's not exactly what you want to be able to code, and you want to be able to get deeper into the pseudocode to actually get what you want. And I think it's always the balance, you know, it's just the 80-20, right? So like, you know, like how long it's going to take to get you to that effect or to that output, because it's just like this balance is all. But I feel there is a use for ChatGPT for image generation. Yes, definitely. Like, and Gemini. Yes. Now I tried Gemini in ComfyUI and it's even better. You know, like there are like some very interesting things. I got a video on my YouTube about this, because I think, like as you said, the conversational aspect is quite exciting in AI. I think it's just, there's so much potential with this, because that's what you want, right? You want to have someone to discuss with and to just give feedback to just improve the workflow.
Yes, my experience with ChatGPT is a bit the same. At first, it's awesome, but when you dig a little bit and you want some precise stuff, sometimes, for example, it follows exactly my image very precisely. Sometimes not, but I don't know why. It really depends. So generally, it's good, but it's not very predictable. And also something an approach that I'm following, because I have a problem of computer, as I told you. So my computer is not powerful enough. It's powerful, but it has not a GPU that allow to run ComfyUI enough fast. So I am exploring the API use of AI model, especially on a site like Replicate that have many AI models that you can run in API. So I have automations that run some tasks like this, but I am also limited by the possibilities. So, for example, I'm using Flux with ControlNet using an API, and in a matter of minutes, in 15 seconds, perhaps I have the results. The image is automatically uploaded in a server and so on. So it's still another app.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, because I think it's, you know, I'm teaching it as well with an online class, and we have that issue with with the CPU. Like it's very hard to ask people to have like a like 12 minimum 12 gigabyte of VRAM. It's still something not very mainstream, and it's a very big it's a very big challenge, I think, at the moment for like for it to become mainstream. And that's why when you have, you know, ChatGPT releasing those models, suddenly like it just makes it much more available for more people. And I think this is, but we will eventually get there. I think that it will pick up, and then hopefully ComfyUI will still be around, but we never know. Like just the pace of those things are so fast that, you know, you don't know what's coming. But I found ComfyUI, investing in ComfyUI to learn it, I think it's definitely worth, because there's this adaptability that I see. Same for Grasshopper. You know, when I learned Grasshopper for Rhino, it was just like, you know, we don't know how long it's gonna be, and you know, like I start learning in 2009 and it's still around, and it's even stronger. So I think those platforms that are so flexible, like Grasshopper or like ComfyUI, I think they are there to stay, definitely.
Yeah, of course. And if we change a little bit of topic and talking about modeling, and because recently also there was a big update which was MCP. I don't know if you follow the MCP topic, which is basically a connection between the LLM like ChatGPT or Claude to Blender or to Revit to conversationally ask some command inside this software. And up to now, I think we talk a lot about images, but when we want to not just create image, but also generate some geometry dynamically with AI, it was very limited, the possibilities. And I think with this new update, it allowed not to wait that Revit, for example, make some update to integrate AI, because otherwise we can wait a lot of time. But it's AI that enter into the Revit field, for example, or Rhino. Do you these possibilities?
Yeah, I definitely want to. I didn't get the chance yet to get my head around, and to be honest, I found it's definitely the next major step I want to take, because I think image generation is sort of like, you know, there's some couple of updates, but most of it is there. I think it slowed down a lot compared to the last 2 years. Video generation is is definitely moving very fast, and there's lots going on, and it's really exciting. I love that part. I think it's just the storytelling part that I really love. So I'm still a bit stuck with it, because I really like that storytelling. I've been also comparing some pay platform just to see how they compare to open source. And to be honest, like the more I use paid platform, the more I realize how good the open source are in terms of quality. Of course, the time is an issue, but it's definitely like the next step on my list, because I think, you know, same when I talk to offices, there are like things, you know, like you generate some geometry and you update your geometry in Revit, and then you have your tags that jump out, or your some dimensioning that will jump out, but not all of it. So it's like, okay, so we don't know exactly which one jump out, which one stay there. And so someone needs to go manually and review all the dimensions. So you have this amazing 3D process where you can use Grasshopper, Rhino inside Revit, and the whole workflow. And then as soon as you update it, you realize that your 2D drawings, some of the dimension randomly will jump out. And you need someone that manually need to go through. And I think this is amazing application for it, where you just go like, you know, check the dimension, let me know. I would love to. And this is how I want to test it. It's just like, let me know if some dimension jump out. Where are they? Or like, you know, like that's what I want it to be. But I don't know if it's just that smart yet, but I think it could be a very good use. But there are a lot of things, like very simple use on like coloring, you know, some space for diagrams or for document that you need to issue to the client, to the builder. You know, you always have to like sort of do those little markups to send across to just get them to review them, and all those type of like 2D time consuming task. I think that would be very a good help I think, and it's definitely something that I'm looking into it. I'm actually looking for like a good Revit file. I haven't found like a nice one that I want to use. But yeah, it's
Okay.
definitely something that
So,
has a
so
lot of
to you, it's
potential.
more this the use of AI inside of BIM modeling is more to fix the little thing, to do some iteration on the whole model that are quite cumbersome for a human, but that could be really done quickly by AI. It's more the use than another use that I had in mind is when you start a project and you want to modelize fast using, for example, your program text that describe your building, or maybe some ideas that you have you want to modelize quickly. I don't know if it would be also an interesting use case.
Yeah, I think it definitely would be an interesting. I think the advantage with this process, I think it can actually fit in more stages of the project. Whereas for me, image generation is still limited in early stages and eventually like sort of late stages. But then it needs to be really like performing good and quite efficient. And I think it's not there yet. But I think as you mentioned, having being able to get the program, get it out of in the software, and sort of start having some massing, that would be very important. But for me, from my experience, what I found when I was working on Kai Tak, a stadium in Hong Kong, a 50,000 seat stadium, I found just for me that the most time consuming was really to redo what we already modeled, coded. Everything was perfect in the BIM environment, and we still had to do like some 2D markups on things and repeat ourselves and I think that type of work was so time consuming and very boring because you already figured out it's like nothing really there is exciting. So it's just like this sort of how to communicate differently the same thing that you already have. I think that would be a really good use case
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, again, like, I think it depends of what people like to do, but I like to figure out the program and how the space come together. And I think it's quite an exciting things to do, but doing this markup, repeat myself for 3 weeks about the same thing just to communicate better. I think this is something I would love to give away to AI.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if recall me my use of AI in other app, generally, if I know how the app works, and I prefer doing it myself because I control everything. But
Mm.
if you are beginner, sometimes the feature create with AI could be useful to have a starting point. So for that, I
Yeah.
think maybe the prompt to a model feature is maybe not that useful for architects because they are generally used to start a project, maybe.
Yeah.
But yes, the small utility powered by AI could be really handy. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And another use case that I have in mind is that if we talk about BIM, we talk about data. You agree with that? So it means
Mm.
that in the BIM object, often we need to add some extra data, like for example a reference to a specific product, a specific furniture, for example. And this process is also long, and you need to repeat all over the model, and maybe the handling of data, which could be really very efficiently by a LLM like ChatGPT, could be also a good use case, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. That's a very very good point. I think there is, yeah, the handling of data, adding parameters. If you can sort of embed that into a Beam object, into to library, your families, yeah. So then you can extract it as well as easy as you put it in. Yeah, that's definitely that would be definitely a step forwards. I'm just saying also like in terms of sustainability, like having all the EPW data, like the EPW data, yeah, that are linked to the location, but also like the EPDs and like like the project description of those materials and the impact, like environmental impact, and tied it back to, I don't know, LCA. I mean, it would be amazing. Like you could question your project and just say like uh, give me an update on the on the LCA. Like, did I do like because we've done some changes the last 2 weeks on it? you know, from the builder, from the client, where are we in terms of LCA? Like, you know, I don't know, like there are like things like that could really streamline the process and have a bit more control over
Yeah.
the different steps. Definitely, yeah.
After me, my impression is that there are some tool outside of Revit, but that could do that. But do you think in the future this AI functionality will be available directly inside the design software like Revit, or do you think it's more an ecosystem of software and each software can communicate one after one to the other and use AI?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I think, like, you know, like, is that the future is like sort of, I see maybe like, you know, you are in the car and you just like, you know, you ask for your email and you receive an email from your client and then he asks you to give you the level 2 of that project. You could just say, hey Siri, if Siri would be that great, can you check about the Revit model, the like, you know, XYZ Revit model? Can you print out the level 2? From the sheet and then email it to the client and just tell him here's a blah blah, and then that's it. You know, I think I see this like this really, where you have like a super assistant that is able to navigate, to open Revit, to create, to print the sheet, to do the thing, to email it to you. Like, I think this is, I mean, this sounds like, you know, if you had asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said like, it's not there yet. But the more we see it coming, I think the more it's something that will be more and more common. So
I think
yeah.
this workflow is nearly possible now, because I have not tested it fully, but the first part, to talk to your assistant, that the assistant make an action in Revit. So I think you can connect a node to MCP nodes that talk to Revit. But after, you need to get the result and after to send the email. But basically, all this concept is the concept of automation. So I don't know if you follow this trend also, automation and AI. Me personally, I'm using a tool called NA10, which allow to connect the tool together, and after you can put some AI in between. But I don't know if it's popular for architects also. This
I think not yet, but I would be really really curious about having a separate conversation about it, Sebastien, because like I think it's brilliant to be able to use it in that sense, because I think that's, yeah, that would definitely be an easy way to get through some work. I mean, you know, like it's the same, like, you know, if you work in the architecture office, how many times like, hey, can you go in the Revit model and then print this and then send it and email it to me? Like, this is something you don't want to do. Like, you have other things to do. Like, you know, you have other things that are more interesting to do. And I think if you can automate that process, wow, yeah, that's definitely, yeah.
But after, the limitation to me is the API, internal API. So the function, the features that are available, for example, in tool like Revit. And for online tool, it's also an API, but another type of API. It's how much you can talk to them so that they make action internally in the software, or they allow to get data from the software. And this is the main limitation. And unfortunately, in the field of AOC, the tools are generally closed. Some have some API, but this is one problem. And another problem for I think about urban planning, for example. In France, for example, for urban planning, we have some open data. We are supposed to have some open data, so that are possibly you could get that data from an automation, from a computer program. But in reality, it's not that easy to get the data. So if you want to feed a chatbot with that data, you need to do some manual stuff, and this is also a limitation that stop us to really be very efficient in architecture, I think.
Yeah. No, but I think this API is a very big thing. It's like on the latest video I published on LinkedIn, I used, you know, Google Tiles, and you get like the Google Earth API, and you just can select an area and you have all the topography. I mean, it again, like Google Earth is not the most clean geometry. There's a lot of work to clean it up afterwards. But if you have some high level aerial shots, it's actually really good to be able to have it in your software, to be able to even test some of the levels. Like it's really good, and somehow, depending on the area, could be quite accurate for early stage. But yeah, I think this connection to the API is yeah, definitely the limitation, but also like what's exciting about it. Yeah.
And after, to have a more global view of the evolution of the work of the architect with AI, many architects are still afraid of AI. I think for a false reason, because currently AI is not so powerful than that in the field of architecture, but maybe it will become. How do you see the evolution? Is it a good evolution for you, or do we have to be fair about it?
No, I think it's fair to be afraid about it, and I think that's what actually drove my motivation to look into it. It was the same for computational design. When I saw computational design in 2009, it was just like, it was these things where, oh, like there are like people coding and they do architecture, but they're coding, and it's just like, oh, this is not architecture. And so I was curious about it. And I think it's the same process now. It's just this curiosity of what is AI. And there's something very fascinating, because the more I use it, and the more I feel like the real skills is critical thinking. And it's very fascinating, because I'm teaching it at university in architecture. And, we have class that are like, sort of, in one exercise, we ask students to use a 3D software, and they have to do rendering, but they have to do one image. And this image needs to tell the whole story, needs to have like atmosphere, needs to tell the whole story with one image. And this is very hard overall with digital design, because you can produce 10,000 images of the same project, with snow, with whatever, with cars, but we force them to have and to pick one image, and then they also have to tell the story and I think this class could be very easy to transfer into AI as well, and being like, okay, you need to find an image that capture your project in like but one single image. And then we're talking about the same as when a poster of a movie, like, why is this image the poster of that movie? How does that tell the story of the movie? And like the director will not put a patchwork of like all the best scene or the best picture on the movie. They will select one, and this will be the one. And I think this is what we really need to focus on for me in architecture, because what makes you like, I remember in France in the whole, they were like, this teacher was telling me like, architects is because I was like, oh, I have a good idea, and it's like, having good idea doesn't make you a good architect. Carry on this idea all the way through, and transforming this idea into a concept, into architecture. This is what it makes you a good architect. If you go on a Friday night in the bar, you will have the best idea ever from everybody in the bar. So ideas is not what makes you an architect. And I think it's the same for AI. Being able to generate an image of a nice building doesn't make you an architect. It's again at the same level as like an idea in a bar of discussing with people. And I think this is where the balance is, like, what's the critical thinking? Which one is good? Why is it good? How does that respond to the context? How does that respond to the people, I think that's what makes,
I have a comparison with photography, because I used to do a lot of photography as well. And in photography, everybody is able to do some photography of anything in 1 second since a lot of years. But famous photographs, they choose exactly the good view, they tell a story and so on. So it's not the complexity, and sometimes their best photo maybe are not the photos that technically are the more challenging maybe. This means that it's not because something is hard to do or not, or is easy to do, that it has some value. We need to reverse a bit the way to evaluate the work. Even if it takes 15 seconds to generate with ComfyUI, if it is really a good project, that this image is the image you choose, you are an architect, you are going to follow up the project and so on, but it's not it's no more the technicality to generate a good view that make you an architect. I think this changed because architecture was quite technical. If you wanted to do some image, 3D image, you need to learn more, you need to spend hours to do the view. So now they see that they can do a view in a matter of minutes. So of course it's challenging because you need to change your viewpoint and evaluate the value of the project, not only on the time consumed in producing the image, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think the image is the photography is excellent example. Like, you know, when the numeric came in, and it was suddenly like, you know, it was just like you could click and then you had an image. I think that was sort of also a revolution. And yeah, they were like this. Yeah, photography is dead, and you know, photograph, like there will be no photograph anymore, and because everyone can take photos, and yeah, and I think you're right. It's definitely the same movement that is happening now. And it's about finding the right balance, and I found it's just challenging. The critical thinking is very challenging. It's challenging to teach as well, but it's quite exciting.
And for architecture professional, do you think it's beneficial to have AI for their quality of life, quality of work? Or at the contrary, do you think that the specific work of the architect will be taken by other people, or will not exist anymore? Do you think our architects should see in general AI as a good tool that will relieve them from spending hours and hours on their project and concentrate on the design, for example, or at the contrary, to be fearful about it and search another activity maybe? Or I don't know.
No, I think that it's definitely it's gonna transform the way we work. I mean, but again, you know, we were saying about, like, I always compare it as well with like emails, you know, when we were just like, and I didn't know the architect, I wasn't when it was mail, but you know, you send a mail, you need to wait 3 days until you get an answer. And then, you know, like, and then so we was like, oh, with email, it's going to be amazing. We're going to save so much time because we're just going to send one email and then we wait 3 days and we get an answer. But now you get like a time, you get, how many emails do you have? You know, like I open every day, I get 100 emails on my mailbox. I mean, a lot of them are spam and things like that, but it just like shows you like the speed is increasing. And it's the same for computer design. I really wanted to increase the sort of the prototyping, being able to test more and experiment more, so then you have more time to think. But it also sort of naturally speed up the process. Even so, I think it's true. Like you still have more time to test, but it's still like, you know, it's still speeding up also the whole process. I mean, for me, where I see it is like so many times I was working in the office and I was working on design and day and night just because I wasn't happy with the output. You know, I was like, I need to model this and I need to visualize it. And I remember being like, you know, working on the project and I'm like, I don't want to go ahead with these options. I'm not too sure yet. I need to see how it looks like before we commit to it. And so that was forcing me to stay and just like try to figure out. And that's where my hope is also with AI. It's just like, well, can I visualize it like in the very different ways, or can I visualize with different elements? So then I can be sure that this is the way I want to go. And that's the way forwards. And this sort of gave me a bit more confidence in where I'm going, and then not being constrained by like, oh, we don't have time, or, you know, the client have like some constraints and we can't spend too much time or money on that phase, so we're gonna have to move on. I hate that feeling, you know, like it's just sort of these things where you're just like, I need a bit more. I need to work out a bit more. And it was like out of my own time. And I think that's where I think AI could be like, okay, yeah, maybe I just don't need as much time because I can iterate, prototype quickly with AI, get something I'm happy with, and then power through the documentation and the rest of the project.
So it's not only to save time and do exactly the same work, but maybe to control much more your project, to do much more option. So you choose really with confidence the ones that you prefer.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this is
to do that.
Yeah, and this is something like, there's less and less, sort of money that can be spent in that phase, and I think that's why I find it's welcome, because it just sort of balance. Okay, it's like, okay, we don't have much money, so time to spend on this. It's
Mhm.
getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So how do we maintain the quality while the time frame are restrained? And I think this is where, okay, if we have new workflow, we have new AI, maybe there is possibility and opportunity to actually being able to move on with more confidence.
Mm.
And I think that's also our duty. Yeah.
Mm. After, another advantage that I heard is that small companies could be doing some bigger project because they don't need as much as people, as infrastructure to follow up a big project. So maybe it's also a chance for that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like all Beam is the same. Like, I mean, when I was in my previous company, we work on large scale project, and what I wanted to do with my own consulting business is also helping small offices to get the right workflow and the right processes to actually handle bigger project. And I had very good project with a local company, and they were like four or five people, and we managed to get like a huge project in, or a couple of huge project in,
Mm.
just by getting like the process right with like the BIM process, so
Mm.
that we can streamline all the workflow. And then you could imagine that, having commercial design, they also came back to me, and they're like, Brice, we just land like a 300 room hotel, and we need to do some study. Can you do them in Grasshopper? And I'm just like, yeah, I can help you with this. And I think this is also where the scale doesn't really matter as much, as long as you have the right processes in place,
Mm.
and the right people and the right skills. I think for me, like, if I would think about an office, I would think about someone who know Rhino, Grasshopper,
Mhm.
Revit, and Rhino inside, so we can get some really nice processes into place where
Mhm.
you can streamline that process. At the moment, the workforce is more like, they know Revit very well, and some know Rhino and some know Grasshopper. But I think having that sort of broader skill set across those platforms, I think is quite powerful, because what process you can put into place having those tools, and then AI again, like how is that AI gonna come into that sort of ecosystem? It's quite interesting and fascinating, but I'm sure there will be some interesting things coming out.
And in the architecture company that you visit, or that you are in contact with, do they have AI specialist internally, or do everybody make their own test? Or how does it work,
Um,
this learning process? Because I think it's we need all to invest some time to learn all these tools. Me personally, I'm investing a lot of time, but there is many to learn. There is some tests to do, and it's not that practical for architecture company to do that. Often they want to have training for software that doesn't change, and now everything is changing all the time. There are new software all the time. It could be very confusing, I think.
yeah, yeah, it is. So some office, like most of the office I visit, they don't really have anything close to someone who specializes in AI. And I think this is the reality. It's growing, and there's also like sort of, I think overall the profession wants to see where it goes before you invest. I mean, there's a lot of things in terms of sustainability that needs to be tackled, and like, and code related sort of element that needs to be handled before you go into like, images and things like that. But I think there is definitely a wish. Like for me, I see the people that are naturally like from computer design
Hmm.
who use Grasshopper
Hmm.
in those office. They tend to have like, hey, they tend to, tell them like, hey, have a look at ComfyUI and do some work around ComfyUI. And I think this is how I see the landscape, because those people might be more familiar with open source, might be a bit more familiar with like visual coding and all this type of thing that sort of helped to go to the jump. I wouldn't ask someone who never touch Grasshopper or Rhino to jump into ComfyUI, I think it would be very overwhelming.
Mm.
But or even like from Revit. But I think someone who's got that skills, that sort of computational thinking, would be really the good candidate. If I see like like in offices, I think that what I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, because at the end, it's the same concept everywhere. You have some data that flow from one point to the other, and you have some function which is a node which modifies this data. And if you understand that, you can understand really a lot of things that are useful for AI, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think after that, it's just it's just a bit of a step, but it's not that hard. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Brice. So just to finish, you have also a YouTube channel, I think, where you are publishing some demo of AI or generative design usage, or what do
Yeah,
you
exactly. So I'm trying to publish a lot of things in LinkedIn, but I found the format sometimes is a bit limiting. So I use the YouTube channel to have a bit of a bigger format where I can teach a bit more about ComfyUI, some of the workflow. I'm sharing some of the workflow, and also like sort of I like to compare Apple with Apple and compare like some different models and the quality. So I'm trying to keep up on this, and it's a bit more around computer design and architecture. I think there's a lot of things out there that are a bit more like over image generation, and I try to be a bit more focused to our work,
want?
and I try to see where the sort of the need is in our profession, and sort of get some video out there.
Yeah, I think it's very useful because most often the video are very short, the videos that we see on YouTube, just to demonstrate quickly, okay, it's awesome, but how to use, we don't know. And I think
Yeah.
it's useful to make a longer video where you explain a tool or a workflow precisely so people can do it themselves and comment and so on. So thank you to share with everybody.
That's okay. No, it's really nice, And then I saw like I saw people on LinkedIn posting their things, and they're like, they're all like, this is based on the workflow I saw with Brice, and this is really nice to see that people are embracing it and sort of exploring it, and you feel like it's helpful because at the end of the day, that's how I learned Grasshopper. I wouldn't have been where I was like in my
Mm.
position now, and my previous job without the forum, without Grasshopper, without the
Mm.
community behind. And I think
Yeah.
this sort of sense of helping each other and try to resolve some of the things is so helpful, and I benefits from it a lot. So I would love to be able to share, and hopefully it would benefits to other people as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to foster this community culture in architecture. I think
Yeah.
it needs
Yeah.
to develop, but thanks with AI, it will people will share more. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thank you very much, and let's continue the discussion on LinkedIn if people want to talk to you as well. I will leave the link in the description.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sebastien, for having me. And then, yeah, it was a really nice chat. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. I enjoy. So thank you. Bye bye.